In the municipality. So it was a very interesting invitation that a municipality having a heritage department, we have drainage, sewage, heritage, in the same line. So that means it is very, what I mean is has to be mainstreamed. The whole process have to be mainstreamed. It was a big challenge. So, so I just came to Ahmedabad and tried to stay in the municipality. These people, other officers will ask me that, you are a heritage department, what does it do? I mean, we have very nice building, and normally what I can show you good building, and you can take it out and make a fantastic farmhouse in outside. I said, no, my work is to preserve as it is, to respect the old city of Ahmedabad and its heritage, and make people realize what it is. So in the process, I started coming and going from Calcutta to Ahmedabad, then realized that it is not very difficult to do something like that within the staying outside the system. So somebody has offered me an old house in the old Ahmedabad, and I stayed in the old city for a couple of years. It's free of rent, and people of Ahmedabad really cooperated. And now it's already become nearly 20 years that now heritage department has flourished, and Ahmedabad become the first city to become UNESCO World Heritage City, and the whole citizens and developers, builder, all making Ahmedabad is a unique place for heritage. The interesting story why I'm coming in Hyderabad, I did the similar process 20 years before in Hyderabad. Hyderabad also called me, and I surveyed the old city for nearly 3 months. And then the day I was appointed advisor to the municipality, Kuli Qutub Shah Development Authority, it was, and the next day all officials was transferred. So there is nobody there. It was very, very unique situation. So definitely, I mean, Ahmedabad benefited out of it. So instead of settling in Hyderabad, I settled in Ahmedabad now. And so this is an interesting story. So I had come back a few months back for a conference in Hyderabad, and I met people here, and then came to know through Anuradha that the Dodin is happening, and I found it's a very interesting process to reconnect. In fact, she took me to the old city. As I was there after 20 years and saw that Lat Bazar is gone, and I have really surveyed, a lot of Havelis is not there. But I feel very pained about this whole process, that something is missing. Some people's connection with the city is not happening. So what is to be done? So then I came back in between, and we had a heritage walk to walk through the old city and documented, see things, heard stories from the people. So started taking interest in Hyderabad. And so in Dodin, in fact, today morning, we all, as you know, many of us went for the heritage walk in the old city. And we gathered some experience. And here I could see a lot of people like Anuradha has been doing interesting work. So I thought that let's put the Hyderabad story where what is possibility, what work already been done. An interesting part is whenever I go travel all over India or the world, Hyderabad always comes with a fantastic presentation to preserve the heritage. I know the department head and everybody, but the thing is, when last time we came for the walk, it was World Heritage Week, and the head of the department of the municipality here in Hyderabad, he came for the walk. He said, first time I'm coming for the walk. So it's very basic, like the head of the heritage department never been to the heritage walk. So it's I think it needs some little connection. So I feel that our presentation today is divided in two parts. One is Anuradha will talk about this Hyderabad work, what is happening, and I think all of you are very much aware of, and how one can pick up small things, small stories, and build on that. In Ahmedabad, it took 20 years, but it is a very slow process, but it is definitely something can happen. And when you walked in Hyderabad, we saw a lot of hope. And I could see a lot of work has already been happening. But somehow, we need to jointly, that's why I enjoyed, I especially came for Dodin, to realize that, like in Gujarat, as I told you, that Dodin will never happen in Gujarat. Because in Gujarat, people don't discuss. There is no public people's forum. People don't express their opinion in public. It happens. You do, things happen. So it is whether call it negative or positive, but in Gujarat, things get implemented. So how you look at it? And Hyderabad, you have fantastic research done, beautiful projects have been done, lot of work, people are very conscious, you can express your opinion here, but something is not getting done. Or we need to understand that why you're lacking. That's why I think this is an open forum, which I'm very much happy to be part of it. And I'll...
Hyderabad plus Ahmedabad divided by 2.
Maybe. So you have to find those formulas. We always look for formulas. So I'll ask Anuradha to...
Where the city has come from. And I'll show you a series of maps that I did for the City Museum, which sort of through the growth of the city also talk about, a little bit of the cosmopolitanism is visible. And I think that's why we need to make sense of our past, because Hyderabad's always been a melting pot of cultures, as it's called. And the first thing we're going to show is a YouTube video. Okay, this was the first engraving that we started on Lad Bazaar. And you can sort of, the atmosphere of this place is still there today, although the charm is, that's Patthar Gatti. I'm not sure whether this will, is it large enough? I mean, can people sort of really, that's Bashir Bagh Palace, that's not there anymore. That's the residency. That's actually not Chaumela, that's King Koti Palace, one of the rooms of the, that's the Falaknuma dining, the famous dining table. This was the opulence Hyderabad was all about. I know that this is only one part of the story. If it was Rama's here, she'll correct me. But there was so much of grandeur, and it was not just, it was a very inclusive culture. It was something which there was no, I think secularism was definitely the agenda of both the 6th and the 7th Nizams, and I think that's what people today, that's Golconda, people today look back onto as being, when they're nostalgic about the city, about Deccan, about our culture. That's again a lovely shot with the High Court in the background. And this is the Silver Jubilee ceremony of the 7th Nizam, 1937. I'm sure many of you are very familiar with quite a few of these, but it's just to get the mood right. Processions on the Purana Pul. Okay, I think we can stop. I think this is where the bit that we. Okay, but why is it going? No, it's the second map. Yeah. So this really is now, you'll see a series of 7 maps. And this was done for the City Museum in Purani Haveli. The idea being to sort of to see the growth of Hyderabad through maps. The big red line that you see is the trade route. And as you know, Golconda has always been a trading center. And the whole, the raison d'etre of this place was trade. Golconda Fort, you can't really, I don't have a pointer, but it's a little thing above where the river bifurcates into 2. Up on top, that little dot that you see is Golconda. And that was built by the Kakatiyans on the trade route. And you'll see that this trade route was actually very important because it connected Hyderabad to Machilipatnam, which was the biggest port on the east coast, to Aurangabad and then on to Delhi. So it was really very significant in terms of what the, for trade. And then, of course, you have the river Musi. And then this was 11th century. And now you come to the 13th century. You see, 16th century. Golconda is a fortified place. It's the capital of the Qutub Shahi dynasty. And you've got the Hussain Sagar built up on, which was not there in the previous map. That's come now. This I find really fascinating because in Hyderabad before, sort of water bodies and things we sort of associate as being, predating buildings. But in this case, the Hussain Sagar tank was built after some of the other built landmarks of Hyderabad. and Golconda was now the capital of the Qutub Shahi dynasty. And then you see a little bit of the development. You can't really see it very clearly, I'm afraid, on the map, but you see, if you see a little bit of a red line down south of the Golconda Fort, that's the beginning of Chichlam village, which was where Hyderabad came into being. Moving 1 century down, this is this is really how, the Qutub Shahis, they were like how they grew, how Hyderabad grew under them. Baghs and Baulis were all, lakes were very important, as we all know. There was, can I just show you on my screen? I don't know if you can sort of make out, but you have, this was Golconda, or, yeah, that's Golconda there. And south of the Musi, they built the Puranapul Bridge, which was the first link from the Musi, from Golconda to Musi. And people say Hyderabad was a city that was planned. I beg to differ. It was not considered to be a city. It was a planned garden suburb because it was not walled. Most medieval cities were walled. The Qutub Shahis designed Hyderabad as a suburb to escape out onto from the closed environs of the fort. And whenever there was a threat of invasion, they retreated back into the fort. So Hyderabad, as they say, is not a city. It was designed as a suburb. It only became a city in the times of the Asafjahs, which happens 300 years later. So the fort's there, it's still very much important, but the city is growing down south. And Karwan, which is a very famous locality even today, was the route where the merchants were. And the reason for that is, again, because it was on the big trade route from from Aurangabad to Machilipatnam. And interestingly, the jewelers, several of them who claim they've come from the time of the Qutub Shahi, still have their little shops and homes there. So it's a very famous and a very historical locality of Hyderabad. Karwan. It means caravan, so that's where the name came. The boundaries of the Qutub Shahi city garden suburb, when they decided to move out of the fort, extended from just down south of the Hussain Sagar. You've got the Naubat Pahad, and that was the northern boundary. And believe it or not, the direction is as the crow flies to the south. Kohitur, which is where Falaknuma Palace stands today, that was the southernmost boundary. If anybody is in the Falaknuma Palace, and if you stand on top of the balcony and look straight ahead in front of you, you will see a red light, and that's the light on top of Birla Mandir. And you stand on Birla Mandir, if it's not very foggy and not very polluted, then you can see Falaknuma right in front of you. And if you draw it on a map, it's a straight line. And that was their boundary for the city, for the north and south. On the west, of course, they had the Musi, and then to the south, the east was the Musi, where it cut off from there, and then the south was, the east was not really sort of properly delineated. But they also had a tank, the Jalapalli tank, which got fresh water. I won't go into too much detail, but this is what it was. That the resident had a map of his new house brought to the Nizam for permission to whether he could construct it. And he got it on a very grand scroll, and the Nizam saw it and he thought, oh, it's going to be larger than my palaces. And he wouldn't allow that to happen. And then somebody advised the resident, take it on a small piece of paper and you can have the same design. And he did, and the design was approved. And what happened was, I think what is considered to be, and I think it is, one of the finest examples of Indian classical, I would call it, architecture in India, which is a British residency, now the Women's College. And of course, it's been sort of immortalized by William Dalrymple's White Mughals, the story of the building. And then, but basically what happened was the residency was north of the river Musi. And then you see a shift, you can see what's happening. Golconda is to the southwest. You've come straight south with Charminar happening, and then you're going up north again, and north of the Musi this time. So it's encouraging people to go out there, but not that much. There's a residency bazaar, which is now Sultan Bazaar, which is under threat, coming up. And the actual residency was built on the site of a Qutub Shahi garden. There is an old map in Chowmahalla Palace which shows the place before the residency came up, and it's really interesting to see how the follies of the Qutub Shahi gardens were before the residency was built there. Anyway, of course, also the coming of the residency brought in a new style of architecture, and the European or the classical style got sort of corrupted in several forms, and you see it in, you saw it in some of the pictures also over there. Then this is the early 19th century. Sikandar Jah was the third Nizam, and he had to give away land to the British government to make a cantonment. And north of Hyderabad, Sikandrabad is named after him. 3 villages in Sikandrabad, Chimalgili, Boralam, and Boinpalli were given to form this cantonment. And interestingly, it is India's largest cantonment today, but it was also the largest British cantonment outside the British Isles when it was made by the British. And again, what has happened in terms of the development of Hyderabad is you see this push again, coming back from Golconda, southwest, south, north, and you really go up north there to Sikandrabad. So this is a whole sweep that's going anti-clockwise. And of course, a whole new lifestyle set in with the British residency coming. Although I think Sikandrabad and Hyderabad have still very much remained distinct, as you all know. And then this is the 20th century. You can't really see that up there, but if you see it on the screen, you'll see how much the city has grown. And why there's a bigger shift you will see from the previous one, where it's literally like somebody's pulling things from the old city, from south of the Musi to the north of the Musi. And the reason for this was simple. The 7th Nizam decided to move his residence from Purani Haveli to King Koti. King Koti was one of his father's palaces, but he shifted there and decided to live there. And once the Nizam moved from the epicenter of the south of the city, a lot of people decided that they needed to move too. So it became almost, the fashionable thing had started in times of the British residency when that moved. But again, the ruler himself moving and uprooting himself from there, I think that's where the sort of decline of the old city happened, but not in the great sense that we see in the last 60 years. Also, 1934 onwards, Banjara Hills became a very, it was again a suburb with all the rocks, as we saw in the film yesterday. But it was where the new the homes were and the residential colonies came up, and that is now to the north, slightly west of Hyderabad. And finally, sorry, this was. That's the late 19th century. This is the early 20th century, and you see Usman Sagar and Himayat Sagar coming up by Vishweshwaraya post the 1908 floods. And what you can't see there, but what it is here, is the extent of the municipal boundaries of the city. And sorry, what I didn't mention, which I should have, was the trade route, which was so important all along in the growth of the city, even up to the residency being there. After the railways came in, the importance of that trade route declined, because trade was no longer important via the trade route because of the railway. And then you had that railway coming in to Nampalli, and that was another reason things moved to the north of Hyderabad, because it came to Nampalli, Sikandrabad, and although Begumpet was a station, it was only a private one for the Paigas. So, okay. So I'll just go back to sorry, I just skipped one. Going back to the current day, the present day scenario of Hyderabad, the airport, Shamshabad, has come, it's to the southwest, not on this page, but lower down. But because it's taken, to make this in a nutshell, I would say it's taken Hyderabad 700 years to make one circle, because they've started from Golconda, and now with the airport coming back, it's really made one circle in terms of growth, and come back to where we were. However, in that one circle, a lot has changed in the way people view what the past has. There are some very bitter memories of the recent past, and perhaps that's why, as this next slide is people trying to shove things under the carpet. And even the other day, I was in the old city, and there's an old man who owns 6 shops in Lad Bazaar, and they're the last 6 left of the original kind made by Mehboob Ali Pasha. And he doesn't want to sell those shops because he feels very closely attached to them. He also insists on selling traditional goods. So he's selling things like telia rumals, like lungis, which people don't use or even know about, even those who live in Hyderabad. And he does not want to shift to anything new. He's got 4 sons, And he also has an old Haveli right behind the Lad Bazaar, which is the last one remaining on that stretch. His sons obviously don't see eye to eye with him, and they say, "Humko amdani chahiye, ye sab nahi." So that's all going to go away. And what they aspire for is exactly this. They want a mall, they want shopping, they want air-conditioned homes. And they're not looking at this as a precious and completely finite and fast disappearing and irreplaceable part of what they have inherited, but something that has become a white elephant, like a bit of a burden, and they just want to move on. And of course, the grass is greener on the other side, and they think, why should the old city not get glitzy malls like what you see in Banjara Hills, because everything north of the river is what people in that part of Hyderabad have sort of thought was the better option, and that they got left behind. This is what I think now most of us are very familiar with. A very dear friend did this. It's an oil painting, and I think it romanticizes what our skylines look like today. But this is a construction of things coming up, and it's particularly painful when you see this coming up in conservation areas, places that are listed as places that we need to protect. Behind a palace, encroached upon something, coming up in place of an old fountain, anything. And I think this fast thing has to, in the name of development, needs to be curbed. We are not alone in this, and this was something that's happened, especially in Europe, very long time ago. This image is a 1953 cartoon from the Punch magazine, and it shows, it's actually called the Heritage Blob, because you have, after the war, London went through a lot of turmoil, and this is the traffic and the commotion and everything. Sorry, it's not very clear there, but what you see is that little lump of all the heritage thrown in. And I think we are very much at this juncture today with people saying, we've got all this traffic going on, we've got all this happening, just get rid of all of that, just put the blob away somewhere, or just, make it disappear altogether. But we do have some amazing things, and we have some amazing things left, and all is not lost. There's a lot that can be done. This image is Mehboob Chowk, and some of us, I think there's, I don't know, whoever's come on the Heritage Walk both last time and now, it doesn't look so pretty, but it can be made to look what it was like. This is what it looks like today. And you still have a bit of the garden left. Might not have all the beautiful settings and the wider garden, but there is something left. And it's not so difficult to make it go back to being that. The market you see at the back, the colonnade, that has to be restored. It's in a very dire situation. The masjid there is still intact because it's a masjid.
Which is this place?
Mehboob Chowk. It's called Murgi Chowk, but I refuse to call it that. Near Charminar. This is Patthar Gatti. Soon after it was constructed by the City Improvement Board. And this is what it looks like now. Sorry, it's a very poor image, but it was just taken off the internet. And again, what it really needs is a little bit of cosmetic care. The building itself was strong, but the signages have to go. And I think if it has to be from within the people, and I think one of the reasons why it's not been working very well up to now, this project, is because the force is coming from on top. Unless it comes from the shopkeepers, unless it comes from the bandiwalas outside, it's not going to work. But that has to happen, and it can. Can you guess what this is? Huh? Can anybody guess what this is? It looks a lot like that. It's the grape gardens of Khurshid Jah Devdi. And those of you who came for the Heritage Walk not last week, but 2 weeks ago, parts of this gate still remain. The vineyards have obviously gone, but there is something of it left. Khurshid Jah Devdi. It's just behind Chaumela Palace. That's how it looked earlier. There are some pictures of it outside on the things of Hyderabad. This is a very romantic version of what it looks like. It's a beautiful sepia picture we found online, but it's in a bad state. However, nothing is there that can't be restored, nothing is there that can't be put back. But it's got a lovely story to it now. It did belong to the Khurshid line of the Paiga family earlier. But today it's an abandoned school. But it has a lovely sports ground, like you can see part of it in the foreground of this picture. And the students, the children who live there, when Harsha was speaking to them, they said, "Ye to apan ka school hai." So you know the feeling of belonging, the feeling of that this place belongs to us and of context is very much there. So if something is there which comes as any sort of intervention that is there made through them and by them and for them will most certainly be welcome. And I think this is why we need to sort of rethink what's been happening in terms of heritage. I don't want to use the word heritage too much, but in terms of rebuilding or in terms of looking at our historic cores of our cities, this has to be rethought because the whole concept of heritage being elitist has to be taken away. If the people who live here think it is their school and their place, what more do you need, really? I mean, everybody wants their place to look beautiful. But there has been a small amount of effort from the government, not as much as we would all hope, and not as much as should be done, because a lot has been lost, which is irreversible. And but this is from the homepage of the website of the Andhra Pradesh Tourism Development, and they have heritage walks, 2 of which we've gone to from the Dodan group. One this morning, and for those of you who came, this is how the website looks like. And they have these 4 walks. And I think just even walking is an experience by itself, which immediately connects the people who are on the walk to what's around. You end up meeting people who are not really connected with the walk, but they're people who are from the neighborhood, from the mohalla. They're curious, they come and they ask you questions, they want to connect. And after all of this is about connecting to people. And I think the minute you start looking at all of this as being a people's thing, it contextualizes everything instantly rather than it being a very sterile intervention. This is the route of one of the things we did. You were asking about the Khurshidja Baradari. It's to the extreme left. And Chomela Palace is, I don't know if you can read it, but it's there in Makkah Masjid. So Khurshidja Baradari is there. So it's in the core, very heart of the main block of the old city. I'm going to sort of borrow from Debashish for a minute. I don't know whether you want to talk about it. He spoke about a campaign in Ahmedabad, which was, oh, it's running. I don't know whether that's on it's on a timer place. Because even when we went on the walk, one of the things, you realize there is a lot of garbage around which needs to be cleaned up. And that's something which I think we all know. I think it shouldn't really be discussed at this point, but it's something is a big deterrent for people walking, especially in crowded parts of the old cities, which most historic cores are. These are pictures that Debashish has shared with us. But now I'll go back, this slide you've seen outside as well. This is Maulali. And the reason I'm showing you this is just to show how even people-driven movements, things which come from within, why I say they're important. Maulali is a very important part of Hyderabad's historic fabric, and it still continues to be so even today. It was patronized a lot by the Nizams, and here you have a procession of the 6th Nizam, and you see the Maulali Kaman at the back. Interestingly, nothing happens in India to the religious structures themselves, the core of them. And those are the only ones, if you see, that have survived through all sorts of turmoil and all sorts of time, not talking about Babri Masjid, but generally in a city, that's what survives. That's where you get to see the architectural forms. But here, but nothing secular seems to be given the same treatment. And what you see over there, the background, is this Kaman, which was the archway, one of the entrances to Maulali Shrine. About 5 years ago, I was driving past there. It was the monsoons, and found that people were trying almost on purpose to bring this thing down. They didn't want it to be there because it was coming in the way of two-way traffic, and that was a route for lorries to come and go. And so I called up the archaeology department, and I was told to contact the press because there's nothing they can do as it was raining. So I contacted the Siyasat Delhi, and they emailed the photographs instantly to them, and it came in the next day's papers on the front page. And So interestingly, a person who had lived in Maulali area all his life but had retired and moved on, he read the paper and he saw it, and he then called me and he said, I want to save this command, will you help me? And I said, of course, what do you want? And he wanted letters to say that it can be restored. He took it to court, fought in the High Court for 4 years, singly, this retired man, Mr. Athar Hussain, and the government had to listen. So here it is, and it's been restored, and it was open now. This was just before it opened, but you have now through traffic going through it. And so this was one man's effort to save this command, which was dear to him. So this is an example of how something which comes from within, something where, and with heritage, I think what's important is the emotional ties people have. That supersedes anything else, that supersedes any amount of lime or beautiful stucco, is what people feel from within for the place and the memories they hold for it. Another thing I'm talking about is the fish market. I don't know if any of you is aware. There's a fish market designed by the City Improvement Board. This is in Begum Bazaar, and it was part of the same scheme that did the Mallepalli thing outside. And I was asked again 3 years ago to write by the GHMC commissioner to see whether this was worth keeping or whether it should be demolished. This was my first impression of walking into the market. The one that you see on the left, the bigger picture, is the main entrance to the fish market. What you see on the right is the very upmarket Burlington Arcade in London, which connects Piccadilly to Mayfair. And I looked at it and I thought of that. I looked at it and I thought of that. And I thought, if Mayfair is coming to Hyderabad in the heart of Begum Bazaar, something these designers must have done to create an arcade, to create a street. And I looked at the fish market, and it was the stalls. If anybody can, if you would like to go and see it, it doesn't look very pretty when you look at it. But in terms of how it was designed for the people who sold their produce, it's impeccable. You have separate drains for the dirty stuff, fresh water separately. The produce which they sell to the clients is separate from the working areas, and all of the original design remains. And I wonder, if today, if somebody had to make a fish market, would they go into such detail? Would they design the channels for clean water different from the storm water, different from the dirty muck that comes out of all of this? Would so much thought actually go into it? And if not, then why are we not learning from what these people did? Why are we taking down what they've done with so much care? Because are we replacing it with something which is worth replacing with? And again, the next thing was, this was the Leonard Mann map, which shows that this was in fact, it's called a Karbaila, which is a meat market. And I did some more research into it and found that the location of the present Begum Bazaar fish market is actually the location of an old Qutub Shahi fish market. So again, the history of this has been there. It's been there for 400 years. And it's evolved over time. It's changed in what it looks like, but it's been there. This is a questionnaire. To the left is one in Telugu, and to the right is the Urdu questionnaire. We spoke to 76 of the people who sold fish in the market on various, different types of fish. They had dry fish, fresh fish, meat. And about 3/4 of them wanted the fish market to stay, because some of them had been children, their grandfathers had set it up. So not only them, but their fathers, their uncles, they'd all been, brought up there. It was part of their home. And they said, "Humko naya wala nahi chahiye, isi ko repair karke de do humko." And here the GHMC was coming in with a plan, not only to take this down, but to put a 3-story fish market in its place, which itself, in its concept, is absurd. Because which housewife is going to climb a flight of not 1, but 2, but 3 flights of steps to buy a produce which is going to create a lot of slippery stuff? Logically, it doesn't work. But this was the plan that these people wanted to put and actually impose onto these people, who all they were saying is, repair this for us. And if you look at it not only in terms of history or architectural importance, but even in terms of sustainability, the amount of energy that goes into demolishing a building and reconstructing it is immense. And it's far less energy consuming to repair a building. So on every level, it's logical to repair it. Most importantly, because the people who use it want it. So why is this dictatorial thing coming in? And this is where, again, heritage for the people is important. It's not about all palaces, although and then this was the plan that we drew up based on what we spoke to the fish vendors. So part of it would need new build because there were not enough stalls for them. But the new stalls would have to be built in keeping with what the original plan was, not something which is completely new. As you see the design, it was built to make, it was not a fancy building. It's nothing, I mean, you look at it architecturally, it's not a Falaknuma, it's not a Mozamjai market even. But it was a simple building with courtyards that a housewife would walk into to buy the produce and feel at home. And she could talk. It was about community. And that's what we put up even in the Mallepalli board. It's about interacting with people. And that's something which we've forgotten to do today through our design. But here you had, it's all arcades and courtyards. And that was the idea. Okay, now I just said it's not about palaces. We're going straight to a palace. This is the wardrobe of the Purani Haveli palace. I had a chance to work here and to design the city museum, which is the first museum in India that looks at the growth of a city. I would actually call it a gallery because it's not big enough to be called a museum. This is the wardrobe of the 6th Nizam, and this is where the exhibit ends for currently, I mean, when people go to see it. This is part of the exhibits that are there. And what you see here is a pot which is 4,000 years old from the oldest megalithic site in India, which happens to be in Hyderabad in Gachibowli. And, but an interesting story which I think I should share with you is when I had brought this pot from the University of Hyderabad has loaned it to the museum. And when it was brought on display, the people who worked in the museum, they said, Madam, आप ये pot क्यों लेके आए? इससे अच्छा हम आपको बाहर से खरीद के देंगे. And I think this is a fantastic example of how our history, unlike in the West, is not linear. We don't have something which finishes in one century, in one generation, in one decade, and then you move on. We are cyclical, we are complex, and I think unless we don't understand how we work as a people, as a society, we will never really be able to understand how to work. Because you have a pot which was made 4,000 years ago. That same pot is probably made in the same fashion, using the same design, even today. And this is not something that you will, find elsewhere, anywhere else in the world. These are the maps in context, the ones that you saw earlier. This is how they look in the museum. And another project I'm going to talk to you about, finally, is the Chaumehla Palace, where, again, I have worked on doing the museums. And this was an initiative of the Nizams, and it's private property. And they had decided to do something back for Hyderabad after all these years. And it was what I call a sleeping beauty palace because it was left, the last important ceremony was held here in 1967, which was the coronation of the 8th Nizam. And it was only in 2005 after the jewelry sale, when they had the money to do something as big as this, that they decided to come and with that money do something back for Hyderabad. And when I started working, when I did my first project there, 2006, nobody, not even the local rickshawalas knew. If you said Chaumehla, they'd say, there's no such place. You'd have to tell the locals Khilwat, then they would understand what that place was. But today you get into an auto in Jubilee Hills and people will know where Chaumehla is. So this is an example. This is India's, by the way, the largest private initiative in conservation in India after independence. And why it's important is because it shows how much something can do and what a far-reaching impact it has. When I started working there, if we had 50 visitors a day in Chaumehla, we would all treat ourselves to a coffee because it was something to be very proud of. And last Sunday, there were 3,000 people visiting the palace in one day. So I think, to me, that's really satisfying having worked there. But I think even as a Hyderabadi, it's great that something like this, which is bringing people, and when people say, oh, heritage is so boring, who's interested in all of that old stuff? But obviously, somebody somewhere is, because otherwise, where would you get such numbers? And again, people make up places, places make up people. I think they're so intrinsically connected. Why I'm showing you this slide is because each of this has a story to tell. On the left, you have this man sitting in a howdah, and his name was Khan Saab, and he, with his partner at work, was one man called Vitthal. He's no more. Vitthal is still there. They knocked on the palace gates when they heard the restoration work had started, and they said, our grandfathers used to work for the Nizams, and they used to repair their carriages for them, and our fathers also did some work. So we know a little bit of how to repair the buggies and the howdahs. After us, there's nobody. So they were hired to do the work there. They have restored every single buggy, every single howdah into working condition. All the buggies work. If you go to Falaknuma Palace, the buggy there has also been restored by them. Not only that, they went on to do restoration of work in Jaisalmer, in Jaipur, in Jodhpur, and in Mysore, because there's such a dearth of people doing this kind of work now. This man has 4 daughters. Each of them is a professional. Vittal had 3 sons. One was a doctor in a private hospital, one was a software engineer, and one was a lawyer. So when I said, have you taught this skill to any of your people? And he said, no, because who wants to do this anymore? But with his passing away, something like that is lost. And I think this is, again, why we're at a very critical point, because in the last 20 years, there's been so much of growth and so much of things away. Of course, it's a very good thing. It shows that democracy is at work and things are moving and things are going for the better. But at the same time, aren't we losing out on the skill? Like the picture I showed you about the pot that was possible for 4,000 years until now, 50 years down the line, would we be sort of, at a loss as to not know how to make that pot? And again, with these howdahs, I don't know. The picture on the right is that fantastic map which I mentioned earlier about showing the residency site as a Qutub Shahi garden. And this, we had the man sitting there who's on the floor with the gray waistcoat. His name was Mr. Rafatullah. He was the head of the Chaumela archives. And he got in 2 people who were from, who had Iranian roots to read these maps, because we had these old maps and they couldn't be read because the script was an old calligraphic Persian. So he got these people and they read them, and we found that it was a very important map. It was a early 18th century map of the second Nizam's campsites from Hyderabad to Bombay. And it was confusing because at the bottom of the page you were in Hyderabad and suddenly you reached Bombay. And everything about Hyderabad was in great detail. And interestingly, it is today's old Bombay highway also, because it had names of places mentioned as you went along. So again, these people are finite resources that we have, and we really need to engage them more and learn so much from them. And the last picture is the people who were doing the stucco repair work in Chaumela again. And in conservation, I think the important thing is that we know that there's a lot of humility involved, because ultimately sometimes the people who know best are the masons, are the craftsmen. And the most that one can learn is from them, rather than from a university education. This is some of the galleries, the one at Chaumela and people using them. And then you have school children who come in hundreds to see the place, which is, of course, a wonderful sight. And to end, I would show you this page. I don't know how clear that is up on top. But this is a visitor book from Chaumela Palace of one day. And it has people's comments written on it in 8 different languages. I don't know where else in the world you will see something like this. On one day, in a working day, to have 8 people giving their comments about the gallery. And I think this is somewhere it gives hope that something, if it is done correctly with the right intention and in the right spirit, then something is possible and we can really make a difference. And although I know Debashish talks about Ahmedabad being streets ahead of us and them having done so much work. But although Hyderabad doesn't look as lovely as it did in the previous pictures that we saw, I'd like to believe that there is something that we can do. And we have to do it collectively as a people. So I think that was the last slide. Yeah.
Heritage buildings. What I was very touched by, your description of life in the fish market in the past, or maybe even to some extent the present, where there was a community, like a nucleus where people, would, just meet each other and feel the togetherness. Mm-hmm. So how to revive that aspect along with restoration of buildings? Can we create spaces for community interaction?
See, I think to start off with, if you look at the design of our homes, vis-a-vis a Western or a European home, they were designed around courtyards. In Hyderabad, you also had a separate Mardana entrance, a Mardana courtyard, a Zanana entrance, a Zanana courtyard. If you look at how these old homes were designed, they were all, even right up to the early 20th century. If you saw the Malepalli boards outside, you'd see, again, the focus was on community, because the homes were around open spaces, and that's why they got a chance to play those sports and excel so well at them. So when you're looking at restoration and going back to what we have, by their nature, these places were designed with the community in mind. I'm not talking about the palaces per se, but even if you look at the Haveli, the small deodis, the smaller homes of people, the shops, everything, you had the chabutara outside. All these things were designed to encourage interaction and dialogue. So when you restore the actual fabric of it, you are sort of restoring in a way what the original design was. But also, like for example, if you see what has happened through Chomela Palace, it has created jobs for a lot of people in the neighborhood. There's a lot of staff who works full time there. Apart from that, you have a lot of guides who sort of sprouted up simply because they have new work there. There's a new antique shop or a little stall which has come up right outside. So that whole market is thriving because the tourists have come in there. People from Hyderabad, people from the schools go there. They're more aware of what there is in the old city. So in that itself, in a sense, is restoration of what there is. Because more important in the Hyderabad context in the old city, more than anything else, what needs to be restored is the faith of those people in life. You just have to go into Lad Bazaar even and talk to them beyond the sales bit, and you'll see what they think of their life being there down south of the river. So I think just that, by going there, by having some interaction, and not just saying Hyderabad is about Banjara Hills or Jubilee and now Gachibowli, but actually, because it's sort of, I also look at this as being two separate parts of Hyderabad, like you've got the high-tech city, you've got this. Those have to be bridged, and you need to go there with a friendly approach to those people, and that itself is a restoration of the faith, which is the first thing that's required. In terms of community, once they look at a space as which belongs to everybody rather than belonging to one person, like the Khurshid Jabaradri belonging to a lot of those children in school who thought it was their home or theirs. They didn't know what it was, but they said it's ours. So that itself is, you restore something like that, you're doing it collectively. So I think there the community comes in to play.
I'd just like to make a comment supporting what you have just said. An initiative for People's Manifesto. Like we thought, it's always the political parties who set the manifesto. We need to get the people to set the manifesto.
Absolutely.
We prepared the manifesto. That was in 2003. Before our general elections in 2004, we had this meetings in about 150 localities in Old City, where we had reached out to about 25,000 people. And very interesting, we asked them, what are your problems? Is it your Hindu neighbor or your Muslim neighbor? Or they said, we have absolutely no issues with Hindu and Muslim neighbors. Our problem is, they listed out 8 problems, which included, health, education, sanitation, civic amenities,
Yes.
etc. And very interestingly, one thing which came out was heritage protection.
Okay.
I had never imagined. And I don't think if you go and do this exercise in Banjara Hills and
You won't
Jubilee
get
Hills,
that.
you will get that. But in the old city, we got that. So I think what we need to do is reach out to the community.
Yeah. Because that's another...
And this is this poor community. I mean, not the very high-flying people, but this community, if we can get them involved, and if we can develop enough political pressure, I think only then we will be able to get out of this. Otherwise, I don't see any hope.
And in a way, they took a lot of pride saying, come and see this, I want to show you this, I want to show you that. I don't think in Jubilee Hills you get that feeling of belonging to a place. It's more your home.
People involved in the restoration work.
See, they're already involved in the old city. Everybody is very curious and they want to be involved in some way or the other. And just by that curiosity, in a way, they're involved. They're already involved. But in the actual restoration work, it's easier said than done, but there is a very big shortage, I know, of people, of craftsmen, of people, of skilled people. And if there are people who are willing to learn, like I remember going with Anand the last time on that walk, and somebody in the GHMC building, which is Sardar Mahal Palace, They wanted to know whether somebody could just come for touch-up work of lime because they didn't know what to do. So if there's somebody like that over there who's willing to take on something in terms of the building, they could be like, your touch-up man for tuna work in the old city. That creates involvement not only for that, but for the rest of the, community. So there are various levels into which people can definitely come in. Debashish has done a big exercise in Ahmedabad about heritage as an economy and how that can bring in revenue for these people. And I think the most important thing actually that has to be done, which is in my eyes the biggest challenge for us, is to take away this mindset of people we don't want to show the authorities we have this building because we want to demolish it. And if we demolish it, humko fayda hai. So if we take that mindset, that is the biggest hurdle. To show them that no, this can be it's a blessing. It's not a, it's not a noose around your neck.
What I was trying to say is in Ahmedabad, whatever this heritage restoration and all you have done.
Was it all government involvement or there was a private involvement? 100% private. Here?
Charminar has a 100% private initiative. It's been a 110% success in my eyes. But the government has been very slow, as we know. The pedestrianization project is not really ideal. But I think we can't really, as Debashish himself said, we can't really ignore the government's presence because we shouldn't forget that most of the buildings that are, apart from the homes, are owned by the government. And if they take an initiative, because somebody did once tell me, आप तो सरदार महल देखिए, वो तो बल्दिया का ऑफिस है, वो लोगों को पहले संभालो बोलिए, फिर हम देखेंगे. So if the government takes the initiative and they start doing something, we need to start first. I think even if it's a small thing, a precedent needs to be created. A small thing which works, whether it's private, whether it's government. But people need to have that faith, and it can't be, even though Charminar has a great success, it's not enough to convince the man who lives in Lad Bazaar that his shop needs to be restored unless he's shown that, you're selling traditional things which nobody else sells anymore. You're selling things which nobody has even heard of anymore in this generation. But if he's shown that, then he will. So it has to be from, from them.
Can the restoration be
whenever we talk about heritage, it's obviously what comes into our mind is what is tangible. The buildings and the pathways and the shops and whatever that you see, which is tangible. Again, my question or my doubt is, how can we preserve the culture? Because now, if you go outside, you'll find, if suppose you find a skilled person who can maybe make a jali or something, but the next generation, his son, he won't be interested in doing that. He may probably do that design on a Photoshop or a thing like that. We are all educated as architects and conservationists. But in the end, to go into that and do the hands-on work and to preserve that vibe that it had, that culture had, can that be preserved? I mean, we're talking about buildings. You said it's a cyclic process, and you also talked about architecture and people. So what comes first? Is it people, hence architecture, or is it architecture?
People can't exist without places. Places can't exist without people. So they are very intrinsically linked. Call it, or the actual building is only one small element. And if it is seen without the people, that's what I said, memories, nostalgia, all these are very important. Otherwise, what is brick and what is lime? It's a building material. And most uninteresting. But if you put a context to it, if you put a memory to it, if you put a story to it, that makes all the difference, whether it's a happy place, whether it's a sad place, whether it's a place you want to be in. So it's the memories that make a place, it's the people who make a place. But in terms of what you're saying, preserving the intangible, I wouldn't, like, it will, if it, I think restoration shouldn't really be, it cannot. It is not possible that it can be, limited to being only for the architectural fabric, because when does a building decline the most? When people don't use it. Why do these buildings fall into ruin? Because they're abandoned by people. So if you bring people back into the place, you give them a place, that is only the architectural fabric restoration, I think, is only the means of the actual restoration. And that restoration, if you have more people going into the old city and more people like, asking, like we went today, what can we have there for breakfast? Or what is available at this time? If the more curious people have, more curious people you have going in over there, you've got the, cuisine is an important aspect of, of heritage that will get, get a lot of boost. Then you also have Dakkani as a language, which, if people go there, it's such a lovely, it's so melodic when you listen to these, the talk in the old city. If more people go there, more initiatives in Urdu, a school can be, Urdu, as we know, we need to give it a lot more impetus in Hyderabad than we have right now. People wanting to go back there, then cultural events will automatically fall into place, because the more people want to go over there, you'll want to go to a mushaira. Didn't you want to stay for one last night? Because of Dodin, right? Because they created this event over here. So if you create a platform, then these will follow. And I think nothing can be seen in isolation. You cannot have architectural restoration seen in isolation of any of the intangible aspects. They just go together.
हैदराबाद एक ऐसा इलाका है जहाँ पर एक दायरा कमान बोल के थे, जो 400 साल पुरानी है बोल रहे हैं। उसको वहाँ पर मच्छी मार्केट के गाड़ियाँ आ रहे जा रहे थे, जैसा मौलाली का सेम क्रैक्स आ गए थे, उसको आ गए। तो वहाँ के लोगों ने खुद उसको रिपेयर करवाया और एमपी के फंड से उसको एक आयरन के रॉड्स डाल के वो लारियों को ब्लॉक कर दिए। और एक मुशीराबाद में एक मस्जिद है, बड़ी मस्जिद बोल के, 400 ईयर्स ओल्ड है, कुली कुतुब शाह के पीरियड में बिल्ड हुई से, वो सेकंड लार्जेस्ट मॉस्क इन हैदराबाद। उसका भी वहाँ के कमेटी के लोगों ने पूरा जो काली हो गई थी मस्जिद और क्रैक्स आ गए थे, तो कहीं बाहर से दूसरे स्टेट से उसके डिज़ाइनर्स को उनको बुला के, कारीगरों को बुला के फिर ओल्ड हिसाब में उसको फिर रिस्टोर किया और उसके सामने के सहन के एरिया में एक नया कंस्ट्रक्शन कराया। उसमें भी नए कंस्ट्रक्शन में ओल्ड डिज़ाइन को उन्होंने फॉलो किया। तो जब तक पब्लिक का इन्वॉल्वमेंट कोई चीज़ को रेस्टोरेशन के लिए नहीं होता वहाँ के आसपास रहने वालों का, तो चीज़ रिस्टोर नहीं कर सकते, वो हेरिटेज को हम बाकी नहीं रख सकते। तो पहले पब्लिक में आना चाहिए।
जी बिल्कुल।
नहीं, मस्जिद के उसमें मस्जिद की कमेटी का इन्वॉल्वमेंट था और वहाँ यहाँ पर एमपी का फंड लिए सिर्फ उसको रोकने के लिए। तो मस्जिद का काम सेम वैसा ही, वही गच्ची को, पुराना ज़माने का जो गच्ची होता था चूने में मिला के, उसी तरीके से बनवा के वो कारीगरों ने उसको रिस्टोर किया। तो अब बिल्कुल यानी 400 साल पुरानी नहीं, बिल्कुल नई कंस्ट्रक्शन कुली कुतुब शाह फिर बनाए जैसा दिख रही थी।
मैं आके देखूंगी, दिखाना ज़रूर, हम सबको दिखाना।
राइट।
Research time constraints. So I want to say one thing, that restoration skills. Now lime plastering, as he was talking about, chune kaam. Now lime plastering is going to become very important because cement is going to go. It's on its way out.
I agree.
It's too expensive. It requires, cement is just lime plus energy. You know that heated lime is so cement is on its way out. You won't get cement in 20 years time. So I think skill training mein lime plastering probably is one of the most important skill that has to be restored quite fast, because it's needed very much. And but it's very difficult to get lime plastering skills.
It's very difficult, I know. I'm having a huge amount of
I think some initiative, in a small thing, a focused initiative on training lime plastering is a very important thing.
Because not only for old buildings, I think lime is a building
new
material
buildings,
for new buildings.
I'm talking new buildings, small town buildings, village buildings. See, cement is not available to everybody. Rich people get cement. But lime plastering is such a beautiful technique. नहीं Baba, we know the scene. The scene is very bad in lime plastering. I think lime, it should be included as skill in some technical institutes.
So. Yeah. And I think it should even be taught in architecture schools.
So
as a material.
The thing is that we have to, it is in the context of it to plan for a coming years when this kind of energies are not available. I'm talking of electricity and power and things like that. The other thing about, see, heritage is restoration of community, ecology. So the heritage walk is a tool. But I think a wider tool can be used, like what was a diagnostic survey, the tool which you are familiar with. And that is something also can be very participative tool.
Oh, yes.
So I think heritage walk...
Yeah, heritage walk is one tool. And
I know.
One thing for
I'm saying that
it's the
today,
first
if
step, I would call it.
you're talking restoration of community and restoration of ecology, and heritage is a part of that. then I think we should have a slightly wider tool. And those tools,
No, I agree with
which
you.
are very beautiful tools, and they are very participatory.
Yeah.
I'm
The reason we showed
afraid
the
that many
heritage-
people may not know about this thing, but that Debashish or somebody can explain.
The reason we showed the heritage walk as a tool is because it's already something that's on the ground.
Yeah, I know it's
So-
very popular, but I think that we
No,
should.
but it's only the
I
very
think
first,
we
it's a
should,
baby
should
step.
include the diagnostic survey
I agree.
and corrective surgeries. Those are very important tools, and the time for the restoration of those tools itself has come.
Yes, I agree with you.
That's all I want to say. I'm sorry, people don't know this.
One day exclusively for heritage and all those tools.
Absolutely.
Maybe somebody can give 2 words on what is diagnostic survey is. Okay.
हैदराबाद के अंदर ये महलों से महला जैसे टॉम्स है पैलेसेस है उसके साथ साथ अगर आप देखेंगे खबर जो होती है
जी।
खबर पे भी इतनी वैरायटीज की खबर है
पाएगा टूम्स तो सबसे बड़ा है वैसे।
बागुरिया जी की भी गिरे वहीं पे हैदराबाद में उनका भी बहुत बड़ा टॉम बनवाए थे उस वक्त दिल्ली से कुछ मंगवा के लगाए झूमर वगैरह तो वो भी दिखा
अच्छा।
Positive thing that a lot of things is possible in Hyderabad. And what is very important is that the people of Hyderabad. I have now started reading more stories, and this is my 4th visit in last 2 months, and I could see a lot of energy and a lot of individuals coming up to ask. But one thing I just want to conclude that private initiative can flourish is also very much depends on the government policies. I'll give you an example. To restore building, you need money. And today, a lot of people want to take a bank loan. But according to the present banking loan system, if your building is more than 15 years, you can't even apply for a loan. So for Ahmedabad, we had to change the policy in HUDCO, in the National Housing Bank. Then Housing Bank gave Ahmedabad municipality a special permission that if Ahmedabad municipality guarantee the structure, only then the HUDCO will give loan. So we did that. But it has to be changed into the national. So the role of municipality and government is very important for policy. And most of the time we also engage government, the court cases through bylaws. So then private investment can come in, like in Rajasthan. The Rajasthan government gave us interest-free loan to restore many of these palaces. So a lot of